Welcome to Establish the Edge. I'm your host, Mike Leone. Excited to finally be talking some week one DFS content here. I've got Adam Rauch with me, who brought the GPP game scores over to Establish Run a couple of years ago. And Adam's been doing the write-ups with the game scores for us on site. We did this podcast as well last season. We're going to try and do it, regularly here as much as we can each week, kind of giving an initial look. Things, of course, are going to change throughout the week. The game scores, if you're new to this, is kind of like a catch-all metric for us to just rate how good this game is for GPPs. It's based on our large field projected ownership for DraftKings and FanDuel, the value of the players, the ceiling of the players, the total salary. All those kind of work together to give us an idea of the best games to stack. So that's what we're going for, Adam. And if you want to explain a little bit, here's a scatter plot that you shared with me beforehand. And we look at a lot of times when we're doing our GPP recaps, what are we kind of looking for here?
We're looking to land in the bottom right quadrant here. You can see that each week, and each week you'll see this. I do this after every main slate, where we chart each main slate game by value on the x-axis and average ownership on the y-axis. So a lot of times you'll see these higher owned games fall on the top right-hand quadrant, where those games had a great average, had a really high average score, but they were very highly owned. And then a lot of times you'll see games fall on the bottom left, like this Patriots-Panthers game, where the scores were really low and the ownership was really low. Where the outliers are kind of in the top left and the bottom right. Top left are the games you want to avoid. The games that don't score well, we get really high average ownership. Games on the bottom right, like this Cardinals-Niners and the Falcons-Saints game. This is week 9 from last year for reference. Get high scores and lower ownership. So that's where we're trying to land on.
Yep. And the average score is of the top 8 players by, kind of our value formula, just to give some context there. And as Adam said, the goal is, obviously to find games that can go off that people aren't playing as much, but we also want to be cognizant of games in the top right that potentially are so good that we might play even into ownership. And it's a difficult dynamic. And some of the things we'll talk through on this show will be, sometimes there's games that don't rate well that we like just because we like a specific grouping there. I should note that these game scores are generally based on the top 8 players in the game, going back to that scatter plot. So there's times where depending where the ownership and value falls, there might be a stack we like more than this because it's concentrated around a few guys we like. But ultimately we think these scores are a really good representation of what we're looking at on the slate. And Adam, kind of, a good one to talk about right off the bat that might be confusing to people why it doesn't rate well would be the Miami Chargers game. We see it's got the highest game total here at 50.5. Pretty neutral game score rating though overall. And part of what we're trying to capture here is one, this game has great ceiling. It's one of our highest ceiling games in terms of projections, but it looks like it's going to carry ownership with some of those high-priced players. And because it's high-priced, it's a little bit tougher to fit in. That's why it's neutral, even though the game total is so high.
Right. And this is a classic example of these top right-hand quadrant games that we were looking at in the scatter plot, where, like you said, this is the highest total game on the slate, even though it's not a super high total. It's 50.5 right now. But you've got explosive offenses. There are some slight concerns, but most of this ownership projection is being soaked up by Tyreek Hill, who's projecting right now to be the only 20+% played position player on either site. But even then, we can still find some value in this game. And when I say value, I mean not so much in terms of the value scores, because the value scores are actually just okay. This week across the board on DraftKings, the value scores are actually down. The pricing is really tight on DK across the board. But Justin Herbert stacks with Keenan Allen, with Big Mike. I think those stacks fit pretty well and won't be super owned. On the other side, if you wanted to play a Tua Waddle Keenan stack or a Tua Waddle Big Mike stack, that could also work. Just when you throw Tyreek in there, you got to be cognizant of pricing and ownership to an extent, but especially pricing because he's above 8K on DK, that is.
Yeah, and a couple important notes here. As Adam mentioned, DK's pricing is a bit tighter, FanDuel's is a bit looser. So there is sometimes a little bit more ease getting in one of these high price games at rates okay because we can sneak in some values on FanDuel. Whereas DraftKings, if you're really making it difficult for yourself to roster build and you're playing into ownership, like I'm more likely to stay away a little bit. But the Herbert side is what I would want with Mostert, I think, coming back. He's one of our better running back values right now. I am concerned that it's going to get steamed, and it might be annoying for people to hear during the show, but we're cognizant of like these ownerships move. And sometimes even the fact that a guy's projected low early in the week gets everybody on him and then he's high end of the week. So we're going to be, really cognizant of that structure. But other big picture thing, Adam, and you have this in our notes, this game is an afternoon start, and we are also more willing to play the chalky games, or at least start with them when they're in the afternoon, knowing that we can make some swaps if we're behind, or if we're ahead, we don't really care about the chalk at that point.
Right. That's going to be the case year round. You're always going to find that these late afternoon starts are going to have some of the chalkier games on the slate. So just be mindful of that in ownership where, like you said, you can swap off a chalkier play if you need to, or if you went contrarian on your earlier slate plays, you can kind of stay put. I want to remind people that when we talk about ownership, we're not exactly always trying to play the lowest owned games on the slate. There's a balance between playing a game that's super low owned and a game that's going to be super high owned. So just because the average ownership on Dolphins Chargers is going to be high doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. It's bringing down the score a little bit on the table, but that's all in. You have to think of that in context of the rest of your lineup and how much ownership you distributed to the rest of your plays. So just another note for people when talking about these afternoon chalk games.
Yep, the inverse is true too as well. Where like some of these games are real low owned, but like don't think Carolina Atlanta has the ceiling to get there. And there's many correlations you can make in a lot of these games, but this is for like game stacking. We're talking like doubles with a bring back. If you're in real small field tournaments, sometimes you might even be playing like half your lineup from a single game, which can get you there. I'm not going to do that every week, but some weeks you're going to do that. And obviously, even if you like in Tennessee, New Orleans, for example, like Chris Olave with like Derrick Henry, like it's not to say you can't play that, but overall that's a game that we're, not targeting too much. One game that I love a lot, it's going to be somewhat popular, but the Jacksonville Colts game. It's the highest game score rating over on FanDuel, second highest on DraftKings. And if you look at Pat Thorman's snaps and pace article, one of the articles we like to look at each week, he's got Jacksonville Colts as the first one there. And we've seen in the preseason, the Colts play up in pace with Shane Steichen there. And Jacksonville was playing more up tempo last year, a little bit pass heavier. So I'm excited about this game. I think the difficulty for me in this game is the Colts side. I think you can play some naked Anthony Richardson. Do you have to stack him, I guess, if you're playing the Colts side? And then if you're playing the Jacksonville side, do you need a bring back, and who would that bring back even be, is sort of the difficulty in this game, Adam.
I think the answer on the Richardson question is a bit easier to answer than the bring back for the Jacksonville side question. Justin Fields showed us last year that we don't have to double stack a running QB with that kind of rushing upside in a game stack, or even just like in a naked build. So no, I think if you want to play Richardson solo, you can do it.
Yeah.
My inclination is not to. I just think Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville stacks are more enticing and have better ceiling potential. and could actually even be like Lawrence against Richardson in terms of ownership could be like a leverage play there. If we
Yeah,
think that Richardson's going to be more popular, which I think he will be.
that's a really good point, because I think from a ceiling standpoint, I can talk myself into naked Richardson with like even double stacking Lawrence coming back. But then if you're doing that and you're playing the more expensive quarterback, it's kind of like, you're trying to thread the needle maybe a little bit too much, and you're better off just taking the lower owned quarterback. It's not even a huge price difference either. So we'll see. I could see Calvin Ridley getting a little bit steam, but my boy Christian Kirk, who I've been on all offseason, I think is pretty strong there. I think that's a fun one. I think if I were playing Richardson, I might just do like the mini with like ETN or something and actually get off Lawrence, as opposed to if I'm playing the Jacksonville pass catchers. I think you're right on. You kind of want the Jacksonville guys. In large field tournaments, I could see taking a swing on like Alec Pierce or Josh Downs, where it's like, I'm just worried about the reception volume of someone of Michael Pittman's, even though his target share should be good. Like, can he hit the ceiling he needs to at 6K? Whereas like these other guys who are real cheap, one big play and we're there, right? Like, so that's what I would be looking at. But I'm with you. I lean more the Jacksonville side on the doubles. The next highest rated game in our game scores, Cincinnati at Cleveland. A little surprised by this one, to be honest. Wasn't totally expecting to see it up here. And, when I'm looking behind the scenes, exactly how that gets here, it's a game with like moderate ownership. It's like good but not amazing value, good but not amazing ceiling. Kind of like the same thing with salary. It's like not great, but not too hard to get in there. The game total is surprisingly like the second highest on the slate, only 3 points. So it's one of those games, Adam, that like it doesn't pop in any one way, but it ticks the boxes sort of across the board.
In the context of the slate itself, it looks better. But if you were to plug this game in on a more appetizing week one main slate, I don't think it would stand out as much. And I think the second highest total on the slate is helping propel that a little bit. Now there is some ceiling here. It's kind of hard to deny Jamar Chase doesn't have an immense ceiling, like he does, and his projected ownership right now, I think we had him at around 16% on DraftKings, which in retrospect isn't so bad compared to other receivers on the slate. I will say I was a little bit drawn to this game because it's an easy tight end plug spot with Njoku. And we've talked, and when I say we, like other, Levitan, you, Drew, have talked about how there is some value in being able to incorporate a tight end into your game stack. And especially in a week where tight ends across the board, maybe outside of Mark Andrews, are pretty affordable, or pretty, you've got a lot of cheap options to say the least. So that also gave me some interest in this game. There is some risk here though. Like, we haven't seen Joe Burrow play since his injury, and he's not exactly discounted at QB. So yeah, it's a little bit surprising, but I think it sticks out mainly because of the context of the slate as opposed to the game environment on an individual basis.
Yeah, I definitely, if I'm envisioning how I'm actually building lineups, I think the way I'm doing it is taking a chance that Watson, with, getting that rust off, we can see some ceiling. I think they're going to be more aggressive throwing the ball. It's a pretty cheap stack. To throw Njoku in there, and Amari Cooper even is like pretty underpriced and doesn't seem too chalky, especially for where he's been going in redraft leagues. And like even Elijah Moore down there. There's also DPJ as like a deep play threat. I think he might actually play more snaps than Elijah Moore, but the targets per route run should be lower. But like, yeah, it's not crazy to get the double there with Chase. I really like Chase coming back. As you said, these guys that have massive ceilings, I'm fine playing at 15 to 20%. When they get 30 plus percent, I'll avoid. If I was playing the Burrow side, like on FanDuel where pricing's a little looser, keep in mind FanDuel, without the bonuses and half point per reception, I think you can get away with a little bit less stacking. And I might do like the alpha stack with like Burrow, Chase, and maybe not force a double there. I know we also like Mixon too as a possibility if you're playing like just Cleveland playing from behind, and Mixon getting there on the Cincinnati side, forcing the Cleveland side to throw a bit more. Let's look at the Las Vegas Denver game, which is kind of our third green game of the week. And I should mention, Adam kind of alluded to Cincinnati Cleveland on a different slate, might not rating as well. These ratings are all like relatively speaking. So this 2.7 number, it's all relative. That does not mean the same as a 2.7 on another week. So we do get Las Vegas Denver though in the green, even though it's lagging behind the top two games. This is one where I think the market projections early on are a little bit muted on Denver. There's still a little bit of uncertainty on if Jerry Jeudy's going to play. We're kind of assuming he's out. I guess there's some chance he does play. I'm worried, especially in small field, if he's out, Adam, that like Marvin Mims is just really going to get super expensive here. Like he's the cap relief guy, especially on DK where he's been priced that everyone is going to want to go to.
Right. And if you were following the preseason and our work during the preseason, you would know Marvin Mims was getting first team snaps by the end of the preseason. He was on the field with Jeudy and Sutton. So his ownership, if Jeudy is out, is going to skyrocket at 3K on DK and on FanDuel too, where he's FanDuel as well, but especially on DK. Cortland Sutton is also very cheap. And right now we have him at about 15% as well. I do have some interest, and I know you do as well, because I know you're a Davante Adams guy.
Yeah.
This Jimmy G to Davante correlation at sub 10% is intriguing, even in this low total environment on the road. I'm a little hesitant to lean in fully to a game stack if Jeudy is out, but this is kind of one of those wait and see kind of deals. Again, I don't want to get too sucked in on a game that has a 44 total, but you have to consider the ceiling that Davante brings in a game like this. So it's worth considering.
Yeah, I would. I kind of just like Davante Adams by himself, honestly, on this slate, where I just think he's been undervalued in redraft leagues. I think he's going to be undervalued in DFS, where people are going to take a wait and see approach with Jimmy. And if we're willing to kind of just say like Davante Adams is going to earn a 30% target share no matter who it is, and he's amazing, this is a good time to pull the trigger. I don't think Jimmy has like the juice to get there. Maybe I'm thinking too narrow-minded, but I'm worried Jimmy doesn't have the juice to get there. So if I was doing a stack, if let's say you think in large field too, maybe the Denver ownership stays like fine where it is now, which we're projecting kind of like mid to high teens for Mims and Sutton, and our stuff still likes it, right? Because of the salary and the value. Like you could do a Russ double with Davante coming back. We don't have to get crazy contrarian. So like that works. There's also Dulcich, to your point about correlation, and the tight end position doesn't look super great this week. If you want to do if you want to get off Mims chalk too, you could go Russ, Sutton, Dulcich, or go really cheap with Russ, Mims, Dulcich, and bring it back with Davante Adams. One game that is in here that doesn't have the highest total, but Philly, New England, we have on our list to talk about. That's an afternoon game, so you do have some swappability there between pieces in the Miami, Los Angeles game. Denver, Las Vegas is afternoon as well. Green Bay, Chicago, Seattle Rams. So like you're going to have a lot of options in the afternoon slate if you want to swap. I guess this Philly stuff, it's kind of hard if like Hurts is going to be chalky or not. But I think with the pricing on DraftKings, Hurts is actually not going to be too chalky. And even on FanDuel, we don't have them that chalky. And the pass catchers are always tough, Adam, in base projection to like get there. And they're always two of the wide receivers we have like with the widest gap between ceiling projection and base projection. So I think that's a fun one too, in terms of like, it's an expensive stack, but that's your pivot with Miami Chargers stuff. If you're starting with the chalk there, where like, I don't think it's going to be mega low owned, but it's going to be lower owned than I think Tyreek stuff will be if you go to like Hurts, AJ Brown or something.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be much. I think it'll be much lower owned than the Miami Chargers stuff. And the other thing that helps you here is New England is priced so cheaply. On if you were considering playing a bring back, you could easily fit that in with like a Hurts, AJ Brown, or a Hurts Devonta stack. And if you wanted to play Goddard, you could do that too. Or like I don't know, you could even play Hunter Henry if you wanted. Hunter Henry's affordable. He's another tight end plug and play. Should get more routes and more targets than Mike Gesicki. So I actually kind of like this game more so than some of the others we've talked about. We didn't get many opportunities last year to play Eagles stacks because they were always so expensive, and playing bringbacks on other sides was difficult because if you're plugging in Hurts and you're plugging in AJ Brown or Devontae Smith, it just left you with kind of minimal room. But like you could even go really cheap at wide receiver on a bring back from New England and play like Kendrick Bourne if you wanted, who's priced way down there. It's kind of a gross play, but this is a rare opportunity where you're going to be able to fit a Philly stack, I think. So if I'm going to try to take advantage of it while I have the opportunity.
One game also in Thorman's pace up stuff is the Tampa Bay Minnesota game. Let's talk about this game, then we'll kind of give some like maybe some other thoughts on games that don't rate as well, some IKBs, but it's a pace up game. One of the fun things with Minnesota, Adam, is like the correlations, like if they hit, you generally know who it is. Cousins isn't getting there without generally two pass catchers getting there, and they're pretty condensed in terms of who's running routes, as we saw with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen leading the NFL in routes run last season. So the question is if Tampa Bay, can get there. But I think the Minnesota defense is bad enough that you could do a Kirk double. Hawkinson might go underplayed. I think his ceiling's quite high. There's also, if you've got to be on, if it's going to be more KJ Osborne or Jordan Addison out of the gate, it's good spot to take a chance because everyone, for the most part, is going to avoid it.
Yeah, I was kind of playing around with some builds on this game. What I found was, and this was on, I'll provide a caveat here. This was on DK because that's where I primarily build, but trying to double stack Cousins with Jefferson and Hawkinson was making it pretty difficult to fit in a viable Tampa bring back on the other side. So I'll provide some caution there, playing Hawkinson at 5,900, because you're not going to be able to fit in Godwin or Evans and then fill out your lineup, the rest of your lineup, in a way that makes you feel comfortable, in my opinion. So that's one little note I'll throw in there. But I do think this game is a little bit under the radar. Like you said, Minnesota's pass defense is pretty bad, at least projecting to be pretty bad. And it's tough to put faith in Baker Mayfield and a disgruntled Mike Evans. But yeah, I mean, they're going to go out there. I mean, Mike Evans is going to play. He's basically at this point playing to audition for other teams next year. So, I mean, that could be you want to throw in like a little narrative motivation in there. That could work. And Mayfield's 4,900 on DK. I mean, I'm not saying go heavy on Baker Mayfield, but it is worth looking at this game, I think, in general, because like you said, the correlation with Minnesota is so strong. You just know that if Cousins gets there, he's going to carry guys with him. And I think the same is true for Mayfield as well.
Yeah, I do worry a little bit on DK more so than FanDuel that Justin Jefferson's maybe like, you can play him at chalk, but if you're playing into the stack, like there's going to be a lot of Jefferson teams, I think, this week. And in some ways that circles us back to the Cincinnati-Cleveland game and Chase kind of being maybe a better play with a shakier, I don't even know how to say shakier floor, but just a little bit slightly lower expectation than Jefferson, but has that crazy ceiling, a little bit lower ownership. So,
and one more note on that game, Mike, just real quick. We also have Godwin projected a little bit up in ownership right now. I don't know if that's going to be sticky by the time we get to Sunday, but he's priced at a point where he's he could get steamed a little bit too if people are kind of targeting this game. So just want to throw that in there as well.
I think that's a good note, and this stuff's sensitive, right? Like this game stack is going to look a lot better if we see like an 8% Godwin versus a 15% Godwin. It might sound silly, but those are the types of like decisions and risk reward that you got to be used to handle. I know we could maybe tie this into dirt plants, which for anyone not familiar with that, on Established Humility each week, Drew and I do flag plants. Adam and I do dirt plants here, which is kind of like a gross stack or a gross player that makes the stack work. But I've got a game that I like that rates low. Anything that sticks out to you that maybe you disagree with the game scores table on?
One game that rates very low that I'm at least a little interested in, or at least maybe on one side, is the Saints-Titans game. Particularly on the Saints side, I think Carr Olave minis or even doubles if you want to get like kind of gross with Jawan Johnson, or even grosser Michael Thomas. Like, it's not terrible. Especially the Carr Olave against the Titans, I think is just a strong correlation. I don't think Tennessee's defense is very good. And then on the other side, if you wanted to play Hopkins or Treylon Burks, they're middling values, but they do fit in builds. So again, that's kind of, I'm not saying it's necessarily a smash spot, but I think it's rated a little bit too low, and I think the total is causing that. So that's where I would lean.
Yeah, the game that I like that doesn't rate well is Houston at Baltimore, where I want to be ahead on some things I think might happen this season. I think Baltimore is going to throw a lot with Monken this year. And in particular, I think like Zay Flowers with some uncertainty, rookie first game, that could be a spot. Even Bateman, I think people in season long think he's like a little bit lower on the depth chart than he actually is. The concern here is it's a script that's not going to promote a lot of passing, and they do have four guys between Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham to throw to. That's definitely the concern, but I do like some Lamar stuff with Zay in there, and I'll give my dirt plant. My dirt plant would be, if I'm doing like a Lamar double here to make it work, coming back on the Houston side, would be Nico Collins, who's quite cheap. I think, kind of young, good archetype of player that we want to target. No one's going to play him. And that's, you're going to need something from the Houston side to push Baltimore if Baltimore is going to get there. So first dirt plan of the season for me will be Nico Collins to make the Lamar Andrews, Zay Jones stacks attainable on DraftKings.
I mean, he does earn targets. I can't say they're great targets, but he earns targets, and that's all that matters. And I'm gonna go pretty gross with my week one dirt plant and say that Michael Thomas, as part of Saint stacks, are going to potentially win people some money this week. Hey, I mean, Michael Thomas hasn't been good in forever, but if there's any week where he won't collapse and walk off the field hobbled and do something, you might as well try it on the first week of the season. And I don't think Tennessee's defense is good at all. And Carr, Olave, Thomas, you can fit it in pretty reasonably and affordably. I think that's where I would go on a dirt plant.
There you go. Yeah, definitely. I think more of a DraftKings play with the softer or with the stricter pricing there, and the full PPR stuff's going to help MT. He can gobble up the catches. Olave maybe gets some big plays, maybe double bonuses in play for those guys. So I'll accept it, Adam. I was surprised, but they're dirt plants for a reason. So you've got the week one dirt plants, Michael Thomas from Adam. You've got Nico Collins from me in order to make some of these stacks work. Keep an eye on the game scores table. It's going to update as we update our projections throughout the week, both ownership and fantasy point. And Adam will be providing a write-up for us tomorrow morning that kind of breaks down a little bit why the games rate the way they rate and what to look out for. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed already to the Establish the Edge YouTube channel, please do that. Helps me to keep doing content like this. Good luck week one, everybody.